Softer Stories of the Dark. On the sinking of the RMS Leinster, 10th of October, 1918. When reading a well-regarded article on the RMS Leinster, what is striking and normal are descriptions by gender. Male passengers, postal workers, soldiers, and civilians alike are introduced by title and available prestige. Women, eternally malleable, introduced by their relation and proximity to man. The fact she was nameless and bringing Adam sandwiches. The fact she was male poet Jocelyn's mother and had once written a song or two. The fact Fanny had purchased red shoes for her trip. I'm positive she was gorgeous. Aren't you? I, instead, imagine the nameless wait for further letters. I imagine the sting of confirming certain absence. Absence heartbreakingly material as well as physical, since both create the facts of our lives. The nameless women following black smoke over the Irish Sea, who from then forth shall be primary breadwinners. Ireland then, no friend to women. A nation grieving multiple atrocities simultaneously. Ireland's upteenth bloody revolution for self-control. Women's endless revolution for same. Two wars, uncivil. Endless and freewheeling, boisterous talk of great men. But what of a pantheon of women and children left behind? It must be easier to value them when placing them within the confines of the narratives of men. Your old one, this man's mother. The young one, a future man's wife. Isn't it sad her daddy died, and now she's tepid, morose. Finally, your one ran to him with sandwiches as he embarked upon the fatal voyage on a gray Kingstown pier. Sandwiches which she'd been up early to make, babes round her ankles, the calloused pads of fingers matching the hard and dark surface area of her brain, soon steeped in endless layers of woe, asexual isolation, and financial calamity. Are men the masters of women even in these tales of woe? Stories lost in the endless gunsmoke and tragedy of men's tales. Power grabs there, imperialism here. A fight to the death for dominance on a railway bridge. Where are my fights, my blood, my quieted, empathetic, therapeutic heroism pooled in valueless coins at my son's feet? He, too, shall one day go off to fight. I crave the softer stories of human darkness, a combined tale much bigger than the clash. It recently was, for example, with Black Americans and Indians in colonial India, that these people of color were only noted in texts deemed official by perceived proximity to whosoever they benefited, be that the owner of their company or a literal master. Are men the masters of women, even in these tales of woe? Are men the masters of women, even in these tales of woe? Are men my master, your master, even in these tales of woe? Thank you. In addition to being a spoken word artist, I am also an arts and culture journalist, an RTE, radio and television broadcaster, and much of my spoken work, it revolves around the connection between the arts, society in a specific locale, the history of that locale, and the specificity of how those relate to identity politics in the area. Now, I speak at many different events, all around the world, in fact. But there's one event that caused me so much personal calamity that it still haunts me several moments of every day. On September 16th, Friday, 2016, September 18th perhaps, on Culture Night in Kilkenny here in Ireland, I had been invited to participate in a panel called Morality in Media. One of my two co-panelists was a journalist named Ian O'Doherty, who writes for the Irish Independent and the Irish Daily Star. When I was brought by Johnny Keenan, the organizer of this event in Kilkenny, to meet my co-panelist, O'Doherty, the first thing he did was look down at my chest, widen his eyes and ogle, and say, "Jesus." I was taken aback, and I expected some sort of retribution from Johnny Keenan, organizer. This didn't happen. It was laughed off, and Johnny Keenan gave Ian O'Doherty a robust pat on the back. I decided to say nothing further, thinking that that was a one-off incident, and continue my professional obligations to the evening. As I was led to the stage, I was sat next to Ian O'Doherty to my right, and he proceeded to tell me, while all of our microphones were on, he leaned deeply into me in front of his mic. The audience was already here, just as you all are today, a pretty packed house, just waiting for the festivities to begin. And he said to me, in front of the microphone, "You're hot. You're damn hot. You're running this thing. You'd better prove to me that you've actually got some good ideas." William Golding, the moderator of the event, an author originally from Ireland who now lives in Brussels and writes about economics, he laughed it off, and attempting to incorporate O'Doherty's comments into the introductions for the event, he introduced the two men sitting on the panel with me by their full name, title, and career achievements. I was introduced as our hot immigrant. I took immediate issue with this obviously unfair and discriminatory treatment, speaking about how, to the audience who was also taken aback, visibly and audibly, speaking to this audience how it is a historic wrong that women are treated as property in so many spaces, that women are degraded and put as second-class citizens so often, particularly in spaces of employment and professional representation, so as to not appear too equal to men. I said this and as a fight against being called what I was when introduced. I got a standing ovation from the audience. Ian O'Doherty, visibly angered at this standing ovation, leaned into me, pointed his finger in my face, and said, "You'd better shut the fuck up." Please excuse my language. This continued the mocking, the blatant, vulgar disrespect and name-calling. The third panelist was not even addressed, not by Ian O'Doherty, not by commentator William Campbell, excuse me. It was as if I had been set up against this journalist as some sort of entertainment for the room that night. I repeatedly requested that the moderator and the organizer have Ian O'Doherty step down, to have the behavior ceased immediately, and time after time, his behavior was excused and even encouraged. At one point, Johnny Keenan, organizer in the back, when I said, "This man needs to be removed or I will no longer speak, I will no longer be a part of this, this is horrific," he threw his hands up and said, "Free speech, not my problem." I was called a brain-dead moron, no, a piece of shit moron. A bitch. I don't want to continue the vulgar language here this early in the morning, so I'll just spell it. I was told that identity politics are not real, that I wasn't capable of saying anything interesting. This from a human being who appeared visibly intoxicated on a stage, not unlike this one, with an unlit cigarette hanging from his hand, slouched over in his chair. After half an hour of this treatment, this barrage, verbally and physically, since he continued to come into my space as I was seated right next to him, 30 minutes into what was supposed to be a 2-hour panel, I got up, I marched out, and I left. And I was followed, thank you. And seeing the women of color in the audience actually has reminded me one important moment that I forgot to mention here. When taking issue with how I was introduced as a hot immigrant, and after receiving the standing ovation, one of Ian O'Doherty's talkbacks was, "Learn to take a compliment. It's not like we said you were from the Congo." When I marched out, the majority of the audience got up and followed me, marched out with me. Thank you. They surrounded Johnny Keenan, organizer, demanding their money back, protesting my treatment, protesting how this was a completely unenjoyable, absolutely unfathomable event to them, and they demanded their money back. Keenan, surrounded by irate audience members, to save face, called me back up the stairs to shout at me and berate me in front of the angry audience, saying that it was my fault, that it was just a bit of Irish banter, and the problem didn't start until I decided to get upset. Friends and colleagues in the media world in Ireland and fellow spoken word artists came to defend my honor and protest the actions that happened at this event on Twitter and Facebook, which was amazing. Yet, Ian O'Doherty continues to be invited to take part and speak at all areas of Irish public life, including the Late Late Show on RTE, and also a news talk radio program about equality for women. I've had to watch this individual be repeatedly invited to speak and appear as an authority on cultural matters and sociopolitics. I, on the other hand, for more than a year, experienced what I can now recognize as symptoms of PTSD. Barely speaking at public events when previously I'd had a robust calendar, not really being able to meet newspaper deadlines, and just keeping myself away from public spaces, wanting to make myself smaller. I am tired of the misogyny. I am tired of the racism. Bleed, he said. And he told me that nothing was for me. He said, I am entitled to everything that is you. And all you feel is you is actually me. I am the molten liquid inside of your veins. I am the fetid self-doubt standing in pools, in corners, waiting to be drained. I am the joy. I am the support. I am the absolution. Never mind the fact I have an 8th grade education and you are on scholarship to university. You won't be paying rent. You're too gorgeous for that. A woman who looks like you doesn't have to do anything. Shouldn't do anything. Oh, they like your words? They're just trying to get their whole. Never mind the fact I have an 8th grade education. This is just the manner in which I understand the relations between the genders, between the speaking apparition of your mind and life and mine. Believe, he said, because my veins are entitled to everything that is you, and all you feel is you is actually me. On Google, the top 2 search items regarding poetry are poems about love, then poems of death. But what about the space in between? What about this dying space in between? Bleed, he said. Bleed, he said. Yet this cannibal, this vampire, has not taken the last drop yet.